Okay. Hello, I'm Jenny Klochko, and today Ukraine's Independence Day, and thank you for everyone who's joining me today, because I thought it would be important to do something something different from interview, and because I didn't do lives quite some time, so it would be nice for us to catch up, to have a chat how Ukraine changed the situation or changed the world. And maybe if you involved in the Ukraine's aid or fighting for Ukraine or any other activity you're doing, it's probably changed your life as well. So as you can see, I dressed up, special and very important for my family and for my story, the embroidery shirt. But it's another topic, it's not involved Independence Day. So happy Independence Day to Ukraine and everyone who's celebrating and everyone who's supporting Ukraine, no matter where you are. I can see our supporters from Aussie, Australia, sending you lots of love and endless gratitude for all your support, for all your efforts, and doesn't matter you so far. Ukraine united many people in Europe, in the world, and especially so touching, and how it sort of changed the global situation. Oh, hello, Johnny. So, as first of all comes to my mind, it's Finland and Sweden used to be neutral, now they're part of NATO, because they're one of those countries who are close to Russia and they understand the danger. And Finland, unfortunately, had this winter war when no one supported them. So, blonde bombshell, hello. So, yes, it's great to celebrate Ukraine's independence, because for the past 3.5 years, we feel especially appreciative about this fact. And I'm sure it's not just every Ukrainian, but many people from other countries lost someone or lost someone or know someone who's fighting for Ukraine. So it's celebration of the independence with bitterness. So global affairs, you know, it's I looked through articles, through interviews about how Ukraine changed the world and how Ukraine united it, but there's something I experienced myself. Last year, I think it was July the 18th, and in the UK there was a summit, European summit in Blenheim Palace, and leaders, I don't want to lie, but there's sort of like dozens and dozens of leaders of the countries arrived, and there were 1,000 or 2,000 journalists in the big marquee, and obviously every media came to follow the agenda of their own leader. And there was two leaders who was interested for everyone. There was Prime Minister of the UK and Ukraine's President, Volodymyr Zelensky. And you know, there was first time in history, I was very proud how Ukraine, from a former Russian colony, post-Soviet country, became one of the world leaders through this bloodshed, through the losses, through everything, and became the symbol of bravery. I remember first time I went to sort of on the way to work during 2022, and usually I don't go to the London Bridge station. It's a huge one, and there's many people from the UK who probably did experience themselves. It was a huge screen, and there were words, "Be brave like Ukraine." At that time, Mariupol was under the siege, and I was sort of texting with some of the defenders, and I made the picture and sent it like, "This is you. This is what you've done. You've changed the world, you put Ukraine on the world's map, and this is how Ukraine's perception now. Because for, you know, just for almost 30 years, yeah, 30 years, Ukraine was, the Ukraine story was told by few voices, few people who were sort of respected and known in the West. It's probably Andriy Kurkov, Ukraine's writer, and Oksana Zabushko, and probably one or two more. But now everyone who is interested in Ukraine or have ideas or have an opinion affiliated somehow with this, you have own content creators, not necessarily Ukrainian. I know there are many European or American speakers, influencers who are covering this agenda, but also Ukraine's story is told by many, many Ukrainians for everyone's liking. It could be the military, it could be the men or women who are fighting on the front line, or the intellectuals. So as a journalist, I know how important to tell the story of the country, of this battle for independence. And now Ukraine has hundreds of voices. For someone, it's Mstislav Chernov and his 20 days in Mariupol. By the way, he's making another documentary. I don't know, have you missed this trick, but he's actually was allowed to the Oval Office with the recent visit, President Zelensky, to Washington, so something's coming up. And he will be one of the participants on the London Film Festival. So if you're in London, there's, I don't remember exact dates, but at the beginning of September, please check it out with the Ukrainian Institute in London. So it will be screening, and also there will be Q&A, so you can hear from him as well and other filmmakers. So now Ukraine is sort of expanding, and these are voices various, and these voices are for everyone's ear. And I think it's a big victory as a journalist, as a person who is in communication. So please carry on listening and following. By the way, one of the changes Ukraine did is obviously the energy in Europe and in the world, and I mean the oil and gas from Russia. And recently there was the developments with the attack on the Russian Nord Stream 2, and apparently there's Ukrainian traces, and someone was arrested according to the media reports, and apparently the German detective have names or something like that. So let me know what you think about it. It's quite a controversial thing, isn't it? Let me know what you think about it. And obviously Ukraine going through strong and inspiring process of interest to their own story, self-identity. Many people switched and matter of principle, speaking only Ukrainian after being, consider themselves as a Ukrainian Russian speakers. So please let me know what you think about that. And if you notice in your own countries, do you think this sort of like is a global trend going about to the roots, self-identity, and many other things evoked? It's just yesterday I saw in the UK there are more English flags in the streets appeared, and so do you think that this trend, obviously Ukraine fighting for own identity and independence, but do you feel in your country, whenever you are, there's people more interested and more proud of the some historical events, figures, and inspiring moments in history? John is asking, can you arrest someone for defending their country? That's the thing. You see, it's so wrong. And can you really, do you have evidence, and how can you disrupt some giant country who keeps selling oil on the grey markets, right? And there was a scandal in Scotland and in Denmark and other countries, sort of like the big companies still making money, still are buying Russia's oil, even if it's sort of like under sanctions, and they still keep sponsoring the war, which is war in Ukraine. And this is where missiles coming into the residential buildings and killing sleeping children. Why those people are not arrested? Why they are not prosecuted? Why it's not going any further than scandal in media? So, are we okay with it? Robert Andrews saying, God bless the Ukrainian people. Oh, слава Україні. Героям слава, Robert. Thank you. Tanya just got on your live, and what are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about, Tanya, how Ukraine changed the world, the global situation in the world. Do you have anything to say on that? Triflog, good morning. Yes. Ukraine definitely made it into the world map. Yes, everybody knows the brave country now. Yes, and you know, there's one of the things, the voices, the choices of stories from Ukraine were one of the big inspirations for me starting this channel, because I noticed, as a journalist working for the big company in the UK, I noticed there are only a couple, okay, 3-4 speakers from Ukraine. Actually, there's interest. Everything else is just not noticeable, and there's no interest, and there is no stories more than, oh, here's the tank on the battlefield, biff puff, bang bang, and that's it. And Ukraine being on the map, it's much more than just tank. It's much more than President Zelensky and the First Lady and the head of the intelligence or the Minister of Defense. So there's much more, and that's why I wanted to give this the opportunity, the platform for these stories about culture, about movies, about just ordinary people. They don't need the reason to be on the news. Just those, for example, the writers, and we have few on the podcast. For example, recently was Pavel Belansky. He's fighting as a serviceman on the front line, and I noticed today on his newsfeed he's in the hospital again. And think about it, man, 40 plus, he has established career as a writer. He's the author of bestsellers. There's successful films made on his books, and he is one of those who is from the east of Ukraine, and who was speaking Russian, and basically his grandparents were moved from Russia when the Ukrainian population was killed through Holodomor, through all this Stalinism and all the cruelty of the Soviet regime. And he's there on the front line defending Ukraine. So, and stories like that you probably won't see in the mainstream media, because you need a big event, you need reason to be there. And my platform is there for you to know about these people, because his books hasn't been translated into English yet. There's in Estonian, but not in English. So, or Andrei Kurkov. Andrei Kurkov, he's been the voice of Ukraine for more than 20 years, maybe 30 years. I remember working for BBC, and we always invited him to explain to the English-speaking audience what's happening in Ukraine, what kind of political processes, who are these political voices or figures, and why this or that. And he probably one of the most experienced voices of counter-propaganda in the West. So he's both Pavel Belansky and Andrei Kurkov, their interviews on the podcast. Please go on the channel and make sure you will hear from them. Because, for example, Andrei Kurkov, he was, of course, you can find his books translated into dozens and dozens of languages, and his novels and his diaries on the war, and obviously his classical Penguin, the story about Penguin. And also, he sees how different in media field, why in the UK it's not so much Russia-loving and Ukrainian supporting, and how difficult it is for France. France still in love with everything Russian, and no matter how sort of like we through this war, through intellectual discussion, we understand that ballet, the Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, it's all the tools of Russian propaganda. Chauvinistic approach to all the republics were under the umbrella of Soviet state. And now sort of like the artists returning to their origin, for example, Kuinji or Malevich, it's all Ukrainian artists, but in the world museums they were defined as the Russian artists just because they're coming from the Soviet territory. For me as Ukrainian, it is important because before the big war, even before the annexation of Crimea, Ukraine on the global scene didn't have as the big identity a part of Klochko, their achievements in sports, I mean the boxing brothers, and Andriy Shevchenko, he's obviously they all the legends of sports. And but now you have, as the global audience and the English-speaking audience, you have so much more to research and form your own opinion, not being part of the Russian narratives or any communication campaigns. Okay, let me see. Tanya, okay. I understand. Tanya saying, not sure all the people you're talking about are trying to understand. Well, you know, it's takes step by step, isn't it? Blonde Bombshell is saying the amazing spirit and kindness and hate nature of kindness to Ukrainian people. Thank you. It's very kind of you to say it. Okay, Trumflug, Nord Stream, there are indeed rumors about Ukrainians having it done. Politicians recognize we want to get rid of fossil fuels altogether. Whoever did a favor to those fighting climate change. Yes, I'll tell you, I have own story. And when it happened, and probably it was on the day when this news about the explosions in Nord Stream appeared, I was in Kiev. It was September. I don't remember the date because there was one of my trips to Ukraine while I was part of the British media crew and going every 2 months to Ukraine during the first year. And I was meeting one of the high ranked with the intelligence, and and you know, these people, they have own sort of kind of like the way he expression things. They saying things not actually not being very direct, let's put it like that. And I remember we were discussing things I was interested. There were sort of operation I was investigating, and obviously I was absorbing everything which was said or indicating or anything. And then out of the blue he was saying, "Oh, have you read the news? What do you think about the situation with Nord Stream?" I have read the news. You know, it's just you're waking up in the morning in the hotel, having your breakfast and getting on with your meetings. But I didn't really have enough information to form my opinion. I was just watching the situation. And I said, well, I don't know, we need more and more sort of like see what's going, if it's, it would be nice if someone helped Ukraine or anything, because anything which can stop Russia's activity. And I know the sanctions, we all promised that it's unprecedented, but the war machine is still working under Putin, isn't it? So I remember this conversation, and then later when the more and more information started coming up, and I'm thinking, was it just a question just just to have a chat, or was that question about my opinion Nord Stream indicating something? Okay, so I'm looking at your comments. So Tanya saying they lie to us here. So what's true? Lie about what, Tanya? My check was too long. Blonde bombshell saying something. Okay, hello, friends, says Andreas. Hello, Andreas. So, if you have questions, or if you have your own observation, and maybe the architect, who are you exactly? Well, I'm Jenny Klochko, I'm a journalist. I'm doing journalism since 2003. I worked in Ukraine till 2011, then I moved to the UK. And then I was working there for BBC. I was working for BBC in Ukraine as well, and then BBC in the UK. Then I was working for ITV, and then I decided to start my own platform to tell stories about Ukraine, to cover something which you can't find in your daily newsfeed. That's who I am, the architect. And today we have celebratory live, because for personal reasons I stopped doing regular lives. And while today is Ukraine's Independence Day, I decided that it would be nice to see you and to have a chat and actually share these observations about how Ukraine changing things on the global scene. How can you what do you think when European leaders went to Washington to support Ukraine while President Zelensky had a meeting with Trump? I think that went well. And so it's really awesome. The only endlessly sad thing, that many Ukrainians dying every day. They die on the front line, they die among civilians, children, and you know the Russia is doing these cruel attacks with this missile hitting the residential buildings, and there is no safe place in Ukraine, unfortunately. So it's unimaginable. So Jakub saying, favorite YouTube, I got to know, why does it seem like this is the first time in time of war there aren't actually reporters embedded with troops? I think it's just because I might be wrong, but I would think of two things. So first one, Ukrainian armed forces, and anywhere you look, and if it's like special operations or it's intelligence, anybody, they pretty open. They changed the strategic communication approach. They very welcome, because you know, this is sort of like they need to show the brutality, the horror of war. So that's why there's nothing, you know, anybody wants to cover or tell the story, more or less they have an access. That's one thing. The second thing, I know as a journalist and as a producer for British broadcaster during the first and a bit of Second Year War, there are places, for example, we wanted to do, when Kherson, before he was liberated, we wanted to send sort of our reporter or do some sort of filming with the servicemen, while, you know, because Kherson, and it's the last region before sort of like on the border with Crimea, and it is on Dnieper River. And also there are many islands, and for a very long time, I don't know how the situation is now, those islands were sort of like, were changing, who's controlling them, Russians or Ukrainians, and there was sort of like, and there was, the situation was very, very dangerous. And these are the cases where reporters or media are not allowed, because there's one thing, you think it's okay, you can come to the point A, do your film and do your interviews and retreat as soon as you can for the media. And this practice is widely sort of used. But there are zones or places on the front line that's definitely, extremely dangerous. And especially for the reporters, even with all the preparations and experience, is still high risk for them. That's why the communication officers are not allowed to go there. So embedding, it's when you have limited access. Here you have access as much as you like. And Ukrainians sort of like open this. I think that's the reason. But I might be wrong. It's all my personal observations. Blonde Bombshell say, great there, Great Britain has been cracking down on Russian shadow fleet transport in oil and developed better technology for detecting the ships. Well, let's hope so, because I had since spring last year, and I had meeting with a few lawyers, solicitors in the UK who are sort of affiliated with sanctions activity, and I wanted to interview them. Obviously, they are not very interested. I was more interested to talk about this subject. And off record, they told me that sanctions, which are declared by the British government, didn't have really the resources controlling, checking, and making sure nobody's working with these companies. And sort of the declaration's fine, but the actual executing all those decisions or those statements, that's the weak place. And also the sanctions on a big scale, especially among the richest rich, those who are oligarchs, who are close to Putin's near circle, they live anywhere in the world. So a few of them kind of like tiny bit touched, but not really. I mean, like, what's the name? I forgot the names. Anyway, so it's not really big influence for those people because they have properties in different countries. They're, global south is not very supportive towards Ukraine, or Dubai is like, place for all the Russian money to settle down right now. So it's not as big and influential as we all would like this to do. Tanya saying, so sad and that Trump doesn't want that. Trump. Do you know about Trump? Does he know? What does he know? I'm not sure he knows what he wants. And I think Michael Wolff, the author of many biographies of Trump, said that Trump, there was an interview with him, and he was asked, so how would you explain this sort of like every day there's sensation, every day there's a new statement? And he says, well, Trump is driven by the headlines. He wakes up in the morning and he understands that I need sort of making headlines. So this is how he's. So for me, it's just the only explanation how to sort of like how Trump operates. Tanya said, no, Tanya, I don't live in Ukraine since 2011. I live in the UK, but it doesn't stop me being Ukrainian. Blonde Bombshell said, actually, I know several journalists who are regularly embedded with troops, Steele and Burns, for one. Well, you see, so I was wrong. There are journalists who are there. So you just check. I don't know Dylan Burns. So guys, check him. If he's embedded, well done him. Okay, Johnny is saying, Jakub, have a look at some YouTubers like Cullen Roberto, Chris Cappy, and yeah, Dylan Burns. Okay, yeah, same. Only me. Hello, Jenny. Hello. So good to make it to live for the first time. I know. That was hard for me. Doing, I'm going through the personal thing. Just didn't have the resource, but today I prepared myself, pulled myself together, and I thought it was just, I missed that. I really want to do it. Luis Rivera, hello from Second City. What's the Second City? Tanya saying, so you guys are war still. Yes, there's still war going on strongly in Ukraine. Jakub saying, I just find it perplexing that for a century we always had some sort of boots on the ground detailing most everything going on in the battles, but the time barely peep. Maybe just the US. I don't know. I don't know. Possibly. Jordan. Sorry if I wrong pronouncing. Super cool, and they let us have bioweapons labs there. Oh god, biolabs. Okay. Have no comments on biolabs. No knowledge about it. Yes, recent developments in detection technology has enabled them to detect the ships. I can find the articles. Oh, great. If they have this, it's amazing, because we need to stop that. Favorite YouTube, thanks you for answering my questions. You're welcome. Thank you for joining. Thank you for finding time. I suspect many of you on holidays, so it's quite tricky to have time away from family and from your resting time, recharging your batteries. So I'm so grateful you're here. Jordan says, do they teach Holodomor history in Ukraine? Of course they do. Of course, and for many, you see, it depends when you were born. For example, I was born in 80s. And for me, Holodomor was through the family history. My grandma told me how it was in the village where she lived, and all the stories and the people, and how it was dramatic because many lost the whole families. For example, there was the family of 12 children, and only one child survived because everyone died. And but then when after the Orange Revolution, President Yushchenko came to power, and the Holodomor topic became like on a national regular level, and obviously we have the Institute of Memory and this Remembrance Day on Holodomor victims. By the way, if you're interested, I have interview on Holodomor on the podcast with Daria Martin-Lee. She's Ukrainian, but she's a British scholar, and she's professor in university in the UK, and she talks about it, and not just about the concept of Holodomor, Stalin's way to destroy this Ukrainian uprising, Ukrainian identity, but also how the story was told, because those Western journalists who were allowed in Soviet Union, they were very much controlled, and it was difficult to get to know the big world about it. So yeah, if you're interested in the topic in Holodomor, please watch the interview with Daria Martin-Lee. And I'm planning to do more stories about it closer to an anniversary. It's sort of like, I think, this Remembrance Day in November. So there will be more story told about Holodomor, because it is just tells you how the Soviet regime was trying to sort of suppress this Ukrainian identity, because there was a lot of uprisings in the villages. Ukrainians, not just brave, they also, freedom means a lot to us, and there were a lot of attempts to stand up against Russia. Jenny, have you had Zarina Zabriskie on your show? No, I didn't have Zarina Zabriskie, but I came across her when I was working as a producer on John Sweeney podcast in spring, summer 2021. Just before the big scale invasion, I was working with John Sweeney on the podcast about Putin's killing. and on which was commissioned by Global, but then Global decided not to run the podcast because they didn't want confrontation with Kremlin, and eventually it's all went into John's book Killer in the Kremlin. So I came across her, but she wasn't on the podcast. Yeah. I think, okay, only me. I think it is not covered well in the US. It's replying to Jakub. Your media is seemingly not covering the news in this area. Yeah, you see, but if it's not covering, on the mainstream media, we're all blessed with YouTube, and we can find big and small YouTube channels, and to get to the sense of what's happening. If one channel or one source of information is not satisfying, you can always find somebody else, or go on social media of this people, this servicemen, servicewoman, and get the information from them. Like, for example, we have the witch, Olga Rapper. She's front woman on the front line, and she's also very active on social media, and so you can always follow. And she's one of the most watched video. She's the only Ukrainian. I had statistic for the most watched videos on the channel. And obviously there were British and American. There was General Hodges, Sean Bell, and among Ukrainians, the video with which was the most watched. And I can know why. Very, very interesting, very charismatic, and very brave woman. Please check her video. And she's one of those who inspiring, and no matter how hard, no matter how sometimes frustrating can be, she's one of those who's always inspiring and keeping things going. Okay, Steve Duncan says, your voice is very nice toned. Are you a good singer? No, Steve, I have no musical talent whatsoever. But thank you for your kind words. I'm very good clapper. That's the only thing I'm allowed to do in my family. I don't have musical ear, but thank you for your kind words. Okay. Aha, Louis explaining me second city in Chicago. Okay, lots of love to Chicago. Now I know. See? Australia. Kay Val says, good evening from Australia. Almost good afternoon from Europe. And it's nice for you to join us. Charmflux says, to cite operators Starsky, the only way to deal with Russian propaganda is to get rid of it. Yeah. So please, Jenny, silence them right here. That's okay. I get you what you're saying. And the other thing I wanted to say, that through this working as sort of like learning about propaganda, trying to understand the tricks and tools of Russian propaganda, I found out a lot of new things to myself. Like, for example, literature. This big myth about great Russian literature. It was created, manufactured. It's actually, the historical documents. There were certain names, and we have covered it a lot on this podcast, and with historians, and not once or twice. Please check. There's Ukrainian voices, the British voices about it, and it is, you see, everything what we think is just as it is. For example, the literature, or the names and music, or the artists, or anything, it's all been put by someone because of something. There's always the reason. So, for example, traveling through Europe and staying in France or Italy, and in this renting properties, and you can see the sort of classics books in there, and among them there's also the representatives of great Russian literature. And I'm thinking, how strong is propaganda? But it's been doing like for 200-300 years. So it's something we learning and need to be aware and need to be careful. And so interesting, my personal discoveries, and I think there will be more to come. And also, if you're interested in history, check out interview about the on my podcast with British historian, the mistakes we haven't learned during World War II. So that's quite fascinating. So have a look. BR saying whatever they don't like, it's Russian propaganda. No, no, I wouldn't say that. It just, I think we just need to be more media educated and understanding. You see, it's the narrative, the information campaigns. For example, probably not many of you remember in 2012 in the UK there was on BBC Panorama there was a film about the Nazis in Ukraine, or how dangerous it's for the black people to be in Ukraine. And obviously that was shocking, because by that time I was already living in the UK, and I was like, it's not true. And it doesn't, before Putin annexed Crimea and before Putin sort of like invaded Ukraine, one of the peculiarities of Ukrainian mentality was very peaceful, because Ukraine is quite a large country, and through the history we were part of different empires. How to live peacefully with many people. So fighting is not our number one way of communication, of dealing with the outside world, until we got invaded and until we were put in a position to fight for own existence. So yeah, Cable says happy Independence Day. We're stopping. Oh, Cable says we're stopping for burgers. Oh, bon appetit. Okay, on the way home from our city Ukrainian event. Oh, amazing, you did it. Thank you for going for Ukrainian event. Thank you for supporting and you managing to join this live. Oh, means a lot, Cable. Thank you. 61 people watching, only 12 likes. Hit the button, guys. Only me. Yes, please, guys, hit the button and be generous. It doesn't cost you anything. Blonde Bombshell. Experience with Soviet ways while Europe knows the way of Soviet-Russian psychological warfare. You must remember, America is such a young country. We became a world power financially, but have no... Well, yeah, we're all learning, aren't we? How to deal with Russian and Soviet propaganda. And it's interesting how America, as a former colony, became one of the most powerful states in Europe, in the world, sorry. And you see Ukraine going through a part, while this Russia is trying to keep this imperialism, Russian imperialism, alive, and Ukraine going through the process of decolonization. And we discussed it with Valeria Karablova. It was last week, I think. Check it out. She's professor in Karl University in Prague, and she's researching colonialism, and she has a lot of to say. So check it out. So, thank you for learning another language that gives me an unfiltered understanding is what is going on. Do more, us in the US needed. Thank you. You're very welcome. I'll do my best. Thank you for being on this channel, and thank you for joining, and thank you for saying these kind words. Blonde Bombshell, I say, real world, long history of fighting, oppression, or detection of foreign infiltration to the expertise. Yes, Soviet Union. Yeah, you see, it's just such an evil empire. There was Soviet Union. This, just beyond of saying how cruel this was, how forcibly it was created, and now Putin being himself part of this Soviet propaganda is trying to recreate it. And it's so strange because we live in the modern world, we live in the world where, you know, we can travel, we can enjoy the bits of different countries. Why would you try to reincarnate this evil beast and kill so many people, not just Ukrainians, but own people? There's, you know, they trying to make women or young girls to give birth, to stop abortions and all of that, just because they're running out of own man. Why would you do this to your country? It's not great leadership. It's not leadership at all, isn't it? Adrian Wall, hey, say, I'm British, live in Birmingham. Hello, Birmingham. But hope to travel to Ukraine. Happy Independence Day to you all Ukrainians. Oh, thank you. Good luck with your trip to Ukraine. Stay safe, and I hope you will enjoy it. I feel a bit jealous because at the moment travels to Ukraine for me not on cards. So enjoy it as much as you can. Ukraine's lovely, so lovely, and so delicious. Go back home. Gus saying, well, I'm sure those who want to go back home, they will, don't you worry. And I live outside Ukraine for how many years? 14 years. So my home in London now. And and your question is what for? Okay, Stephen Darcy. Hi, hello, Stephen. Where I am. I'm traveling with my daughter on holidays right now. So, and due to be back home to London. Hello from Sweden. Hello, Camila. Hello. Lots of love to Sweden. By the way, who loves history? We had recently, maybe 2 months ago, we had an interview with fantastic archive researcher Marina Tratna and the jewels she found about Ukrainian history and Swedish history in the Swedish archives. Amazing work. And since then, there's many Swedish people came to the podcast. So I'm so happy, and please let me know the topics or the stories you would like to hear, and see if we can make it work. So welcome to the podcast. Так. Only me is asking, are the most of the viewers from the UK? Well, it depends on the topic. The core audience is UK, US, and Canada. If we talk about the English-speaking countries, Australia is very active in the comments, not always in the analytics. Among the European countries, again, Sweden is very active, Germany is very active, and Germany is in the comments and in the analytics. Depends again on the topic. Sometimes Finland is there. So it's, yeah, the core audience is UK, America, Canada. Every culture has great rooms, but the other cultures started and promoted more. Yes, absolutely. Other publicized only in other languages, no, then less people can become aware of it, says Takamuchi Yurichin. Yes, it's true. And yeah, the more culture is promoted through different tools or the events or the historical some things, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I started podcast, because I was sort of like upset and frustrated that Ukraine is not just war. Ukraine is not just battlefield or tanks or trenches. Ukraine is much more. And I wanted to tell the story. I want the story to be heard and people to be seen from Ukraine. And that's why, for example, one of the interviews on the first interviews on the podcast that were with Ukrainian, one of the most popular artists, and so sort of to ballerina, the comedian, stand-up comedian, just to give you the flavor to understand how people still painted their masterpieces, still doing their gigs and still dancing ballet, and they all going through this tragedy and transformation of the war, no matter what. So that's why this I did this podcast, and I want these voices to be heard as well. Johnny says lots of kids in here today. Is there? Sergei Pashenko says it's interesting how Ukraine thrived while being the USSR, but now it's changing. Ukraine will be Russia. No, it won't be Russia again. No, Sergei, don't be naive. Phil Waters, hello, hello. United States actually 50 countries in one. Yeah, I know. It can be. Sis. Oh God. Okay. Johnny, isn't ITB 7 countries, 50 states, federations? Okay.